y'all. It's Romania Black, and I'm terrified of this episode, if I'm being honest. We're on Pluto, episode 6. There's only 8 episodes in this series. There's only 8 episodes, and this is the 6th one, and last episode was pure despair. So, what fresh fun might we have today? Right? Because, I'm not ready. I've got a lot of comments, so I don't have time to wallow in my not readiness. But I'm not looking forward to this episode. I don't like angst. I don't like prolonged angst. And I don't know. I finished Monster, but Monster was 74 episodes, so you had time to let the angst breathe. Like, you had time to let, like, the despair kind of settle into your bones, and you just kind of got accustomed to it, but it was like a slow, gradual IV drip of the angst. This is just like baptism. It's just like, dunk you in it, hope you're ready, and then that's it. And there's something outside my dogs are barking at, so if they start going crazy, it's probably a deer. Please forgive them. But yes, this has been just all at once. And then there's all these things that have happened in the last episode that I was like, nope, red flags are going off. Sirens are wailing. This is not good, but we can't help it. And so I just have to dive in. It's like, well, Romania, you either finish the series or you don't finish the series. And I like the series too much to not finish it. So let's talk about these comments. As I was going through episode 4, in episode 5, it is not lost on me the idea of Dr. Tenma, and this is a little bit of a monster, but you find this out in the first episode, so it's not a big deal. But it is not lost on me that you have 2 Tenmas in Urasawa works. One Tenma, Dr. Tenma from Pluto, one Dr. Tenma from Monster, that you have 2 Tenmas that bring a child back possibly from the brink of death. And they could potentially become a monster. It's not lost on me. It's not lost on me at all. No, that there's a connection there. And I was like, Urasawa, did you just pick this entire story because of that? Is that why you wanted to adapt this? But I don't think it is, because there are some other things about Urasawa's connection with Tetsuka, who is the mangaka for this series, that I want to bring up. I do like the idea Death to Boredom talks about Adam becoming his own person. I do like that. Like, after rewatching episode 5, I was like, yes, there is this really awesome idea of Adam not trying to be Tobio. Adam being his own person and becoming his own being. I like that independence and the idea that Adam needs to become a robot that's himself, that's not trying to imitate anybody. I love that. I just don't like the idea of Dr. Tenma being like, well, we'll just force him to suffer and maybe he just won't react to the hate like all the other robots have. Who knows? I don't know. Dr. Tenma needed some serious therapy, and that would have solved all the problems. You know that meme where it's like the book of, here's the plot of the story, and then here's if this one thing had happened? Okay, Pluto, these people got therapy. That's literally what would have solved everything. So if you got problems, go see a therapist. Don't just try to infuse hatred into your children. That won't solve anything. Oh my god. H-Banana7 points out that Ochanomizu thought that was really cool that in the last episode, Ochanomizu, as it ends, he's like in an upper, higher position, and Tenma is down in a lower position sitting on the couch, and was questioning what that could possibly mean. They were thinking that maybe since Ochanomizu was like really hyped up in the moment and had these heightened emotions, maybe that's why he had the high ground, and Tenma, who's pretty much like depressed and given up, is like sitting on the couch like, F it. But my theory with that is that I think Ochanomizu has the moral high ground. Ochanomizu's like, doesn't this seem like a bad idea? Should we really be doing this? And Tenma's like, F it, and let's go. So I feel like it's a visual representation of Ochanomizu having the high ground morally, and Tenma just giving up, throwing in the towel and saying, let's go and just see what happens. But, oh my god. I also like the idea of the H-Banana7 pointed out of the robot that was creepily washing his hands, trying to wash away his sin, and it wouldn't work. I liked this idea that H-Banana7 pointed out of humans have programmed these robots. Humans have programmed these robots to perform human tasks, and for the more advanced robots, they've been programmed to be more like humans. So this concept of like guilt and shame has slowly seeped into the robot's consciousness and their being, without the robots even realizing it, which is crazy in itself, right? And we're going to tie that back to these other comments. Like I said, I had a lot of comments for episode 5 and episode 4, and I was really happy about that. Zinger Binger Box 8806 noted that Pluto's Dr. Timma is inspired by Gendo from Neon Genesis. Gee, I can see the comparison. I can see the influence. It's there, down to the part where he's making bad, questionable decisions around his child. Lovely times, right? But thank you. And then Brian Settles 88 pointed out that robots only have fragments of the truth, and they become kind of with their own fragmented memories that have been manipulated and only bits and pieces of the truth that they're given. It's hard for them to make an objective decision when they don't have all of the data. So they're kind of left in this confusion soup, which I really liked that terminology. And they pointed out that the more cartoony a character design is, the more likely it is actually from Astro Boy, which it's really funny. I'm about to finish this series. I'm working on a video essay. I'm scripting it right now. I'm working on a video essay script about another one of Tetsuka's works, and I didn't realize it was a Tetsuka work until I started researching it, and it's Unico, which is this cutesy little child, like friendly little childlike anime and manga that's kind of like Astro Boy, except when you dig under the surface, you realize it's actually horribly depressing. So it's like, oh, great, awesome. So realizing that that's by Tetsuka as well has been really fun. That'll be out sometime in June. Hopefully, fingers crossed if I can get it finished. But yeah, Painakis points out that Astro Boy was the first manga that Urasawa read at age 4, which, what an influence, right? And talked about how Tetsuka tends to treat his characters like actors, and he reuses them, and they appear in multiple different series, which is very similar to Urasawa having similar archetypes with his characters. I think that's pretty cool. User JKLB7W8R notes that the subtitles in their version had the cult saying that they wanted to kill Gesick but dispose of Adolf. And I think that we talked about this in the comments. There's two ways you could look at that. Either they think that the commenter was saying that the cult, ironically enough, maybe views Gesick as more human, because to kill is something you do to a human and dispose is something that you do to an inanimate object like trash, which is to call Adolf. That is interesting. My thing was, I kind of viewed it the opposite way. I said that they wanted to kill Gesick, meaning they wanted to do a horrific, violent act and be very explicit about it. We're going to kill Gesick. But Adolf, they're like, we're just going to dispose of him. Like, it's the more, like, sanitary, clinical way of saying it. Like, we're going to treat Adolf a little bit better than just Gesick. We're not just going to kill Adolf. That would be horrible. We're just going to just dispose of him. You know, relocate him. Reallocate the parts of his body. That's basically what they're saying. So I think you could look at it two different ways. I don't think either way is wrong. I think that it's just kind of whichever route you want to take it, and you can kind of go different ways with it, and I like that idea. But then Sunspots finally... the theme of hatred being taught, hatred passing on, hatred imprinting, when Gesick says, now that I've learned to hate, and those who are under its influence, they have to be reminded and, you know, being concerned, that there is humanity in others, that it's not just hatred in the world. And I think Gesick is kind of like this white knight, because he's very aware of the hatred within him, but he's actively trying to find a way of figuring out what to do with it. And that's so funny and ironic that he's the robot trying to figure it out. And it's like, ah. So yeah. Also, I was going to say with H. Banana's comment, that the idea of these robots gaining this knowledge of guilt and shame kind of feels very Garden of Eden, sort of, which if we're talking about playing God and Tenma doing all this with Adam, yeah, that kind of checks out. But basically, I've spent the last 10 minutes trying to avoid watching this episode, and because I'm terrified of it. And I don't like feeling angsty, and I don't like feeling sad and feeling anxious, and that's what this episode's giving me, but what can we do? So yeah, Urasawa, you gotta let this seep into our system. Where's my IV? I need that, not this baptism by fire. And I'm afraid Epsilon's gonna die, because I'm afraid Adam's gonna wake up and be a monster, and he's gonna kill Epsilon. I just see it's coming. Okay, we're good. It's been 10 minutes. We're not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive right into Pluto, episode 6, and see what happens. And we're gonna do that here in 3, and let's go. There was not booze put in this coffee before watching this episode, and that, my friends, was a big ass mistake. What? 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 Urasawa! Why can't you let me have one nice, hot-looking blonde character live? Why? So he's dead. He's dead. Gesic's dead. I'm just... I'm so speechless. There has to be more to it. There has to be... like in the 5 stages of grief. No! So there has to be more to it. I don't know if they're gonna bring Gesic back. They brought Adam. They're planning to bring Adam back, right? But they have Adam's body and it doesn't have a hole through it. It was just short circuited. So, oh my god, we're gonna go through this episode and talk about it. Now the mystery is who killed Gesic. That's the mystery because it wasn't Pluto. He's the only one that's not been murdered by Pluto. So. We're going to talk about this episode. I'm just so pissed and sad. I should have known. A hot, blonde, saintly knight. Urasawa wasn't going to let him live. Those of you that have seen this season and series are probably laughing your asses off, being like, she thought, look what she thought. I'm like... So yeah, we need to go through this episode. Now it's like a whodunit, except who's left on the board? And why is Abula being so okay with Epsilon? Like, because here's the thing. Let's go through this. Abula is weird. Abula is a shady mofo. We've established that he's a human that is like mixed with robot now. He's mostly machine. He's more machine than man. He's basically Darth Vader at this point. And then his son Sahad becomes Pluto. Or I guess that would make him Sidious. I don't know. The Star Wars analogy doesn't work. The point is, Abula is pretty shady. Like, really shady. Like, when he was really nice to Epsilon, I was like, what the fudge is going on? But then that kid was having the Bora syndrome, was freaking out. So, there's so many that are just like, oh my god. There's, the violent north wind is Bora. Yes, usually in the winter. Oh my god. So, there's a lot at play in this episode. And my mind is just absolutely racked with just... So in the Persian, in the street markets and everything, whenever we saw him going through at this moment and seeing like all of the different shops and stuff, and he sees the 500 rubles a body, that whole thing here. So let's put over here. I'm gonna adjust the mic so hopefully you all hear me. Okay, so we have unsolved things. Unsolved things with Gesic. Gesic still has some mystery to his character, and there's stuff about his character we haven't had resolved, and I was expecting Gesic to live at least until episode 8 to get them resolved, and now in hindsight, going back, I'm like, no, they were red flagging the shit out of him dying in this episode. I just didn't want to see it because I had shipper goggles on. So, oh my god. So the unresolved thing, that the whole 500 rubles a body, okay, that part there, we still don't know about. We still don't know what the deal with that is. That has never been answered yet. And so I'm hoping that we get some answers with that. I hope that goes through. But I thought that maybe we were going to make some headway with that because we see him going through the shops and everything, and I thought maybe that would jog his memory, that something like that would go on, but no, we don't. Instead, he runs across the really cute little, the robot that's like trying to go through with the flowers, right? The flowers that's going through, the robot that's going through the flowers and gets knocked over, and he stumbles across it, and it's the one that has the credit card reader, and he helps him up and everything. And the little robot tries to give him like, hey, mister, do you want to buy some flowers? And I've got a little credit card reader that helps. And I was like, oh my God, this little kid robot was like so like the little credit card reader on its nubbins. I was like, what the fudge? And so there's this weird dynamic, right? There's this weird thing where you have the disadvantaged that's then given either weaponry or this fuel of hatred, and then it just leads to destruction. I'm so curious at this point about the kid robot, because yeah, he had the card reader and everything on there, and he was like all kind of messed up. Like what's interesting is that the little robot has like the red eyes and everything. I don't know if that was the little robot like evil all along and trying to target him, or was it trying to jog his memory about the flowers? Like, it all seems connected now. The little robot holding the flowers and the flowers being connected to Pluto. Was that all a big connecting thing from the start? And was it connected to his kid from the start? Because the kid was missing an arm as well, right? Wasn't that the case too, that the kid in the flashbacks was missing an arm? We're going to go back to that whole scene, that whole death scene, because I was just like, what? Because the episode seemed like it was going okay. And we had the confrontation with Pluto, and I was like, oh, well, that was resolved, kind of, but not really. But I guess everything's going to be right as rain. And then it was like red flag after red flag after red flag. And I was like, no, everything's fine. We're doing great. There are no red flags. And then suddenly he was dead. What the fudge? Show. So we had this meeting with Abula, and the meeting with him and trying to go over if he's man or a machine, right? And so they talk about, Abula is a weird person because they're very hard to pin down. They almost seem bipolar, which I'm wondering if like him being robotic is like messing with his brain or whatever. It's interesting. I also like the fact that they both were wearing like secondary colors, the green and the orange. I thought that was interesting. And have we not seen Tin Men like purple? They're all like secondary colors, and they're all like based with primaries. So I like that Abula says the country's starting to rise from the war like a phoenix. And then one thing that I wish they would have talked about between this episode, which they kind of do in a way, is about fatherhood, because we basically have 3 fathers in this story. There's a big father-son dynamic throughout the entire series, because you have all the doctors who are fathers to their robot sons. So you have Abula with not only his robot kids, but also with Sahad. Then you have Gesek with his robot child that was killed by Adolf's brother. Then you have Ochani Marzu. Then you have Tinma, who is like the most daddy issues with his son Adam. So it's like all of these dads with the father issues, and in the case of Abula and Tinma, they're trying to force their sons to do things that they shouldn't, and it's like, stop. Quit being that way. And so I feel like there's a lot of things in here. The thing that frustrates me a little bit with this series is that because we only have 8 episodes, we don't have time to sit down and really explore this. And I know that Urasawa did not write a lot with this series. It's 8 volumes, I think. But I don't think they're like the mega volumes like Monster is down here on my shelf. I think they're much shorter. But I wish that we could have spent more time talking about the fatherhood angle, and we still have 2 episodes left, so maybe that will happen. But it just feels like I was like, oh, I wanted more in terms of that, and especially between Abula and Gesek. I think that there was the fact that we don't get a lot about Gesek and his kid. A lot of it's left to our imagination. I'm like, oh, I want to know more about that. I want to know more. Is stuff being left out of the manga? I don't know. And so I wish we could have gotten more time with it, right? But we don't. So, and that robot was following around Gesek from the beginning. So I'm like, did Abula, so like, I'm talking about the robot kid. I guess we'll put the robot kid up here. The robot child. And the murderer. And Helena going to Tenma with the chip that Tenma would be like, oh yes, this high-tech advanced AI that you want to give me that's kind of perfect and kind of like Pluto. Oh, thank you. I'm like, So we're going to talk about it. There's just so much going on. I feel like my brain is overloading at this exact moment. So Goji, let's talk about Goji. We get a little bit into Goji that they talk about here. He's like, every account, your construction of advanced army of robots was possible thanks to Goji's genius. And Abula says it's a rumor. Abula says that Goji doesn't exist, but I'm like, we've seen him, mother trucker. Like, Ochani Mizu saw him. So according to him, Goji is a rumor. This man that supposedly created this army. So at this point, it's like, well, it's like trying to like point around and find the villain, because you have the chief, obviously. I mean, there's the obvious human antagonists that are the chief and Becker and all them who are trying to, you know, who are basically trying to say like, do your job, robot. Gesick, what are you doing? Which we'll talk about that red flag when we get back to it. So there's that obvious antagonist. And then Abula is weird. And so he's antagonistic. I don't trust him. I don't know what's going on with him. Then you have Goji, who we don't know anything about, except that he somehow is connected to Pluto, but yet Abula's denying Goji's existence, even though Goji like is the one that sent Adam to Pluto. So there's clearly a connection there. So you have like Goji, Abula, and Tenma, these three individuals that are shady as hell. They all seem like they're connected. They all appear to be connected, and yet neither of them acknowledge each other's existence. They're like, what? I don't know him. I've never heard of him. And I'm like, aren't you working together? So it's just... And it's like, it's just like, we were like Gesick in this episode. We were like right on the edge of breaking this case wide open. And then it just kind of falls apart. And there's no like, what are we going to do? Because then when Gesick shows in the picture, when he's like, you could try to track down this marionette yourself. And he's like, could you look at this image? And Abula looks at the image. He's like, never met him. Like, lies like a dog. And then Gesick's like, yeah, you're a human because it said you lied. You do know who that person is. A robot would have told the truth. So anyway, we go back to that robot. We go back to that robot that's trying to get Gesick to buy the flowers. And he's like, we have to move on. And the robot still follows him. So then the guy talks about the good luck charm. He Rosepack the merchant. And it's like a little robot. That's Goji. It'll help you find answers to all of life's conundrums. Goji, the wise sage of the sands. So, okay. So we have Abula. Then we have Goji, who is supposedly the sage of the sands. Okay. And they tell us a little bit about Goji in this. Because Gesick's like, Goji? He's like, what? What's happening? And he's like, the almighty fashioned man from the desert itself. So I keep wanting to spell Goji with a G, but it's Goji with a J. So it's basically saying that God made Goji kind of like Adam is what it sounds like. He fashioned him from the desert itself. And he says that he went to the ancient Uzbek king who wondered about the truth of this life. So he went to a king wondering about the truth of life. Okay. What does he say then? So at that point he says, and soon as that king had been enlightened, Goji turned back to sand. So the king was given knowledge from Goji, and then Goji turned to sand. Okay. And the sage of the sands, Goji. Yep. And he was so that he never actually deigned to wake up. And so then, yeah, the little robot asks for his for the flowers. And he says, what's your name anyway? He says, Muhammad Ali, which is the boxer, right? The famous boxer Muhammad Ali. Is that little robot's name Ali? So the Goji thing is interesting. He's supposed to be basically given, if we're going by this idea that man, if we're referring to like man playing God, then we're saying that man created Goji, who's a robot. We can establish that from the encounter with Ochanimizu. And then he went to the king to tell him the truth, and after telling that truth, he disappeared or went back from whence he came. So we don't know where Goji is, but it's like, has Goji spilled his truth? Has he told the truth to the king? We don't know. But here's the thing that's so heartbreaking is Gesik's like, well, that's a lot in a name, and he gives him the flower. They say he was the greatest. Can I live up to that? And he says, of course you can. He's like, I want to be a scholar. And he says, you're going to study a lot, but I know you can do it. Do you think I can be like Sahad? And that's when Gesik's like, Sahad? And he's like, yeah, the guy that you showed the man the photo of him. And I'm like, yeah, so this kid knew about that. And then he's like, yeah, he went all the way to the Netherlands to study. How did this kid know? So he can turn this land into a field of flowers. He's my hero, mister. Do you think I can be like Sahad if I try hard? So there's this really weird, eerie thing where the robot kid wants to be like Sahad and make flowers. But Sahad, as we come to know, becomes like Pluto that leads to destruction, which he ends up destroying the flowers and Gesik at the end. So I'm like, I guess you can't be like Sahad if you try. But it's like, but what? Why? It's so twisted. It's so messed up. And he's like, oh, nothing's wrong. And he says, don't ever lose hope. And then Ali asks, well, what is hope? And he's just like, oh, hope's important. And then he's like, and then the little robot just smiles, and that's it. And then he says, mister, will I see you around? And then, yeah. He goes, yeah, I'm sure we'll meet again, which was red flag number 1. And I thought when it said red flag number 1, I was like, oh yeah, he'll see that robot kid again in like 1,000 pieces or something, or he'll be destroyed. Oh my God. Oh my God. So he goes to the house where Sahad lived, and they talk about how he basically could grow all the flowers. And it's heartbreaking because it's the idea that this robot, and now that connects back to the body of Pluto that Pluto stole when he was with Iran, is that he was trying to like create all the flowers and grow the greenery. Well, all that makes sense now because that's literally what he was doing here in the Netherlands, was growing all the plants and flora. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so then the idea was to create this single tulip that was perfect. But the problem was that it killed all around it. That's not ominous as F. No, not at all. No, because what it's basically saying is like Pluto and them, like all the robots that are indestructible are going to have to be destroyed, right? For this one perfect robot, the greatest robot ever made, to survive. But I'm like, I thought Gesik was that robot, but I guess not. Is it going to be Adam? Maybe? I'm like, is Tenma going to, because Tenma is trying to jumpstart Adam to get him to activate, would he give Tenma Gesik's memories? Because Gesik's memories are filled with hatred and anger and suffering. Would he take Gesik's pain and implement it into Adam to wake him up? Is he going to like merge Adam and Gesik together to create this ultimate robot? Because I was like, oh, how is he going to jumpstart him with hatred and suffering? Well, he has now the memory chip of Gesik with all of these memories and all this emotion in him. Is he going to use that to kickstart Adam and make him wake up? I don't know. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. But yeah, but the idea that Sahad was just like wanting to become this student that wanted to bring flora to Persia and have it grow without to be resistant. There's a symbolic idea there about trying to bring something that's hardy and resistant to a desert area. So trying to bring a tulip that can keep growing to an area that is desolate. There's a symbolism there, and it's like bringing peace and prosperity to a land where the climate doesn't acclimate for it. But the problem is, what is the price that you pay to bring that in? And it's like, yeah, you've brought in this thing that is going to never die, but the problem is that it's not sustainable for life around it. So it's very symbolic. It's very talking about the symbolism of bringing something in and the price that you pay for that to get that perfection. What do you pay to have it? And it's, I'm just so pissed. I'm so mad that he's dead. I'm not mad at the show because the episode was amazing, but I'm just pissed off because he's gone. And I don't think he's coming back. I think the story's going to transition now to be about figuring out who the killer is, what Abula's thing is. Poor Epsilon is the last one, other than maybe Adam. And then Adam's whole thing. I think that Gesik's story is done. And I'm so mad because I wanted Gesik to live till the end. I wanted him and Helena to adopt a kid, move to Japan. But yeah, so he gets this tulip. And it feels as if the tulip will await his return. And that's when he goes. So then we meet Anton. Anton's the little robot that was getting like the last, like ordering the flower orders for this girl. And the thing about it is, I'm assuming this girl is human. But the thing about this series is, at this point, the series has just bamboozled you with people that are robots that look like humans, people that are humans that have robot parts like Abula, people that are robots that look like robots, people that are human that look like humans. At this point, the line is so blurred, and that's kind of the point that it's blurred, that you just don't know. And you're just sitting there like, wait, are they robots? Are they not robots? And at this point, it doesn't matter. That's kind of the big point. It doesn't matter if they're robots or not. But it's the idea of these robots gaining these emotions and becoming human. And so we're becoming more human. So that's, oh my God. I did love the flower patches of tulips that were all grayscale. And then the one flower, the single tulip, the single perfect tulip amidst all the dead ones. And it's like just color spotted there. That part was so good. I loved that. Yep. But yeah, and then we find out that the guy's daddy-o is, the dad next to him is Abula. Now, okay, one thing is, who the F is this kid? The little teddy bear in the chair is one aspect of the mystery that we don't know, right? So there is this child. I'm like, is the robot that shot him the child in the chair? So there's this child in the chair that we still don't know who it is. It's not Pluto, because we found out Pluto is Sahad. I thought for maybe a second that this child, the teddy bear in the chair, was Pluto, because it's like, oh, that's the voice inside of this monster. No, Sahad was Pluto. But we don't know about the child and the bear. We don't know what that is. He said, Gesik is getting closer with every step. And I find it very impressive. Don't you think so? His investigation skills are amazing, but that's not the half of it. His sense of initiative, his weaponry, not to mention his zeronium skin. In terms of potential, Gesik is the most powerful robot of mass destruction I've ever seen. Pluto might not emerge from this in one piece. So, the child is not Pluto. It notes that Gesik is the strongest. I'm like, is this child the robot that shot him at the end that was watching him? But then it's like, who is the robot? Who is this child in the chair, the teddy bear in the chair, working for? Who are they working for? Who are they telling this to? Why are they talking about Pluto? And it's like, it's the truth. But you know what? There's one good way to kill Gesik, and it's kind of perfect. Do you want me to tell you? Here's what you do. So, okay, so whenever the child was, they're the one that has technically murdered Gesik. But we don't know who the child is. We don't know who the child is, and we don't know who they're talking to. Who are they telling this to of how to murder Gesik? Show, you gotta tell me who this is. Oh my God. So then he goes back to see Brow, like just go visit Hannibal Lecter. And I guess to try to just tell him and try to get some information from him. And he's like, do you think it's Abula that is causing all this? And it's like, okay. So then we have like the Ronald Newton Howard, like the memoriam, the funeral. I don't know how I feel about the holographic like pyramid of information floating in the sky. It's a bit tacky. But it is what it is. And so it says he was truly a great scientist. His discovery of photon energy, like a ray from God, has brightened our path to the future. Imagine that. Now here's red flag number 2. Abula is weird. Because Abula, like, he seems to, like, be all up in Epsilon's business, which I don't blame you. It's Miana Mamoru voicing him. I'd be all up in Epsilon's business as well. But the thing about it is like, he gets all, he basically, he doesn't seem standoffish to Epsilon at all. He actually seems like he cares about Epsilon. And I don't know if it's because Epsilon is the one robot that abstained from the war and didn't fight against the Persian army. So maybe Abula's like, you're the only one of the group that didn't fight me. I'm okay with you. And then he gets onto him and then realizes that he also has taken in a bunch of these orphans. And he's like, oh, and you're a family man too. You're totally fine. But I don't trust Abula, so I don't know. But the thing about it is, he knows now what Epsilon's weakness is. Epsilon's Glinda bubble does not work when it's cloudy and overcast and rainy. It needs, like, direct sunlight. It's solar powered. And guess what Pluto causes? Massive storms where sunshine is not present. So, and Pluto's still alive. So, it's very possible that Abula could use Pluto against Epsilon. Very possible. I personally think that Epsilon is going to die. I think Epsilon is going to be destroyed. I think Adam's going to be the last robot that's left because he's Astro Boy. And that's what this is adapting from. I am not convinced he's dead, especially after last episode. And I think it's going to be Adam versus Pluto. But Gesick let Pluto go. Is Adam going to do the same? I don't know. I don't know. I think it speaks volumes that Gesick, who is the robot that has murdered someone alongside Brow, I think it's worth noting that Gesick makes the decision not to. When all of the humans are telling him to murder Pluto, Gesick doesn't do it. He's the one he's the one robot that spares him. And then Pluto doesn't kill him. It's something else. So Gesick figured it out. Gesick figured out the idea of a scientist loading every personality on Earth into an AI. And then he's like, and then Brow's like, well, that won't work. He's like, there'd be no persona. They couldn't pick one to go with. But an intense emotional reaction could elevate them, like anger, sorrow, hatred, could elevate them and awaken them. And he's like, correct. Hit with those, it would be sure to awaken. Now, the thing that's weird about it is that you had Sahad, who became Pluto, but he was only acting out of, like, basically he was doing what Abula wanted to do him for. He basically was doing everything his father was telling him to act, because his father took his brain and put it into Pluto and was just acting out of revenge that his father wanted and doing what his father said. And now he's just overwhelmed with all of these emotions. He's basically, his father made him into a Frankenstein monster that was destroying things. But he hasn't really killed any people. He's just been harming robots. So, and doing what his dad was telling him to. So, it's like Pluto has just been killing robots. It's been the roach monster that's been killing the people and putting the horns in them, but not Pluto. Not with humans anyway. But that still doesn't answer who the child with the teddy bear is. Doesn't answer that question at all. That's still a mystery. And we still don't know who's responsible for murdering Gesick. We still don't know about that. I don't think it's the cult. I think that's a big red herring. But yeah, so Abula, he cries in front of Epsilon, who, looks like a damn model, and all the kids show up. And then he, like, shakes his hand and everything. He acts like Epsilon is just, like, the one robot he's fine with. And he seems, like, so sympathetic. And I want to know why. Like, why get on Epsilon's good side? Because I was waiting for, whenever Gesick said to arrest Abula, I was waiting for Epsilon to get in the middle of it and be like, oh, no, why are we arresting Abula? He's a perfectly fine guy. We met up earlier at the funeral and he was totally sane. Like, I was waiting for Epsilon to, like, step in And I don't know if Abula was just trying to win him over so that he wouldn't get involved or suspect him. I don't know if he's trying to lull Epsilon into a false sense of security and then take him out from behind. I don't know. That's like the show won't tell me. And I'm like, but I don't know what to do about this. And so then they look for Wassily. Wassily is the kid that they're looking for. And then this kid is talking about, he keeps saying Bora. And I'm like, so he has the Bora syndrome, but I'm like, what do we do with that? I don't know. It's like you have Pluto over here, you have this term Bora, you have these three guys, there's just antagonists everywhere. It's a mess. I'm definitely waiting to see how this all wraps up in 2 episodes, which is insane to me that we only have 2 episodes left. I feel like there's all these loose threads, and I want to know how they all wrap up. But then I don't want to know because I don't want any more characters to die. And this is not the happy feel good story I thought it was gonna be. Which you should have known. It's called freaking Pluto. But anyway, so he gets onto the one guy, the one director, for erasing his memories. I don't blame him. And he talks about possibly like resigning from the service, which the moment he talked about resigning from the service, I was like, yeah, that should be a red flag. That should be a sign of something going wrong. But I didn't want to believe it. And then the other red flag should have been Gesick going through the field of tulips like frickin' Russell Crowe in Gladiator. That should have been a sign. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was like, oh, it looks just like that. Isn't that fun? Isn't that a fun time? Isn't that great? It was also reminding me of Psycho-Pass, that series, the finale of season 1. I won't spoil it for you, but I was thinking of just the field leading up to a certain place where things happen. But yeah, he goes in to get to Pluto. Now, Hoffman and Ochanomizu, who have gone to Japan with Helena, these 2 men are like, I almost don't feel bad for them because they are asking for it. Like, Ochanomizu was just like, I'm just gonna fix this dog, and the one robot was like, are you sure? That seems like it might be kind of shady. No, it's fine. What are you talking about? And then he gets, tagged by Goji. And then Hoffman here, he's just like, oh, I'm fine. I came to this conference and I'm a target and stuff, but it's fine. And I'm like, y'all should be more cautious. Why aren't you more cautious? I would be like in a bunker somewhere if I knew that somebody was targeting me. I'm like, are you kidding? What are you doing? But he's like, I'm carrying out my scientific duty. I'm like, can you not do that through Zoom? I feel like the technology has warranted where you don't have to. That's the thing. Bitches, I feel like the technology has developed enough in the future. You don't have to go to these conferences. You can Zoom from home. You can Zoom from your impenetrable shelter. Why you gotta go there in person? But, so this was developed back in 2003. It's written back in 2003 before that technology existed. So, and I guess it's not like, in Banana Fish, in the animated version of Banana Fish, the series was written in the 1980s. The anime updates it in a really, really smart way where it's modern, and Banana Fish is like a timeless manga. I love Banana Fish. It's very timeless because you can update it for the modern era and not have to change much, and it all kind of makes sense. Cell phones are the only part of Banana Fish that you kind of question because it was originally written in the 80s and phones aren't really much of a thing in the story, but it's fine. The way it's written, you don't worry about it. This, written in 2003, they weren't taking Zoom into account or something, or video technology like that into account. I feel like Banana Fish was created in like 2019, I think, and it updated from the 80s to that time period, and not much technically had to change with the story, so it was fine, but there were like little tweaks to the tech and stuff that made sense. Here, if you tried to implement Zoom, I guess it would be a problem. It would be a plot point, but whatever. But yeah, also, Urasawa, now I can't ride in a car because Urasawa's made it to where some bad things will happen in cars. Now trains are about the only thing that are safe. And now I can't go into bathrooms because you'll run into shady people in bathrooms, and elevators are off limits too because you'll run into shady stuff in the elevators. The cockroach monster is terrifying. I hate him. He is absolutely disgusting. Like, and there's multiple ones. There were multiple cockroach monsters. No. Why? Multiple robots with cockroaches. I don't know what to make of that. Does that mean they've been in multiple places at different times? I guess so. The thing that gets me is Abula kind of, he gets on to Hoffman being like, you know, why don't you give us that technology to Persia since you're just hoarding it all away? And Hoffman's like, and to Hoffman's credit, he's like, I don't get to make those decisions. And then they get to talking about Gesick, and he's like, oh, well, and then he just keeps talking to Abula. Abula's like, so does that robot that you got to see have flaws? And I'm like, don't tell him. But he's like, oh, I made sure layer upon layer of advanced control systems are within him. And he's like, oh, to prevent him from going astray. And he's like, astray? He's like, yeah, I guess. He has struggles and doubts just like any of us. And he's like, if struggles and doubts are what you call as flaws, then I'd say your fail-safes are the source of both. What would you do if your robot were to make an irreparable mistake? And so he brings up the idea that his memories have been tampered with while Gesick is fighting these cockroach monsters. And so then he just brings up this shred of doubt in Hoffman. And I love that as he's saying it, you see the reflection of Abula in the mirror. Oh, that part was really, really good. Just like reflecting him. He says, what does he say there? He says, if another robot happened to kill a human being, then I believe that robot should be destroyed without hesitation. And so Abula basically, I feel like Abula is the one that had Gesick killed. I feel like that's the case because because Gesick did kill a human. And I feel like, which if that's the case, if Abula did kill Gesick, that sucks because Gesick spared Pluto when he could have destroyed him. But he spared him. But then on the other hand, I don't know if Abula did kill Gesick. I don't know. He mentions it here, but I feel like this series is all about a damn bunch of red herrings. Can we also talk about how Gesick looks amazing running? Just gonna point it out. He looks really good running. So then he corners Pluto. I'll be honest. Pluto kind of looked adorable with the little Jawa eyes coming out of the rocks. Like he just had little Jawa eyes lit up and everything, which I think was very intentional because what's so fascinating is that Gesick kind of calls Pluto out and he's like, no, you're actually just this robot body. This is just a shell and you're just this tortured mind that is doing these things for your father that you shouldn't be doing. And it's so crazy how a tiny little cute robot holding flowers went from being the most precious thing to terrifying in one episode. And this other creature, Pluto, that has been terrorizing and been hyped up as being this scary bad guy is just this robot, this kind man inhabited because his dad needed therapy. It's funny how we subvert these things. Right? But yeah. But he ends up talking about, as all this is going down and Gesick's trying to barter. And I loved when Pluto was trying to do all of the illusions to try to distract Gesick. I was like, oh, that's so good. And he ends up going back to him saying Pluto. And he says, no, you're not Pluto. You're not the tulip that's killing everything around you. You've just been led to believe that. Oh, I loved it. Because, yeah, and the thing about it is that Abula is not Sahad's real father. He's a man that is now more machine than man that lost his wife and kids, and he used Sahad as a weapon. So he made Sahad into a weapon and imprinted and transferred his hatred onto this robot, onto Sahad. And so it's you have the idea of Abula transferring hatred to Sahad. You have the idea of Tinma, who's not only transferring hatred probably to Adam, but is also transferring it to Helena as well now, right? And then who knows about Goji? We don't even know where Goji... We have Abula, we have Goji, we have Tinma. We have these three figures that we don't know what's going to happen with them. But Gesick has the option to kill him, and he chooses not to. That was red flag number... I don't know how many at this point when Gesick's like, no, I'm not going to kill him. It's fine. And then he's like, well, I'll just resign from Europol. And I was like, that should have been a big red flag right there. What do you mean you're going to resign? Because they're like, you were made to be a detective. This is your point. This is the point of you. And he's like, nope. And then when he was like, well, I'll just take a year leave of absence. And I was like, red flags everywhere. But I was so floored that he didn't do anything to Pluto after finally catching up to him. And then the phrase of the episode, the phrase of the series is, if your father loved you, he would never force you to do this. And there's some religious connotations with that I'm sure, like God and Jesus, but, you know, there's some connotations with that. And with God and Adam, and you can make those. You can go ahead and make those. But just the idea of Tenma and Adam, and I can see the Gendo comparison. I can see it real clear. Same with Abula and Sahad. Like, just, it's mind-blowing. And yeah, he wouldn't have forced you to do this. So then he goes back and talks to Helena, right? Because she talks about working late, and she talks about home interior, and she's an interior designer. And then he's just like, you know, we could try for Japan again next year. And then she's like, it sounds like you're quitting your job. And then he talks about adopting a child, and she's like, well, we tried before. And he's like, well, they just didn't have a good match for us then, but things have changed. And then she says, would I be a good mother? And he's like, you'd be the best. And again, red flag, red flag, red flag. I thought Helena was going to die. The moment where he like reaches out to her and touches like her hand and everything, I thought Helena was going to die. I thought like a rocket was going to fire into that room and blow her up. I didn't blow her up, but I thought that's exactly what was going to happen. And so then he talks to, he like has his last words with Hoffman about like robot bodies being hijacked. And he says, even he hijacked the bodyguard of the robot tonight. And then he's like, what does he tell him there? Because he says there, he's like, I just have a feeling I figured out the truth of it. Because wait, what does he say there? Yeah. Okay. He says, let's wrap this up. And the cluster cannon blast that weakened the integrity of your frame. Again, red flag, red flag, red flag. Should have known it. And then he says, the dreams that I've been telling you about lately. And he says, yeah, he's like, they might be gone. I might have to contend with them anymore. He says, nothing I can name. It's just a feeling. Like I finally figured out the truth of it. And then he kind of like smiles at him. And I'm like, so, red flag. This episode was all full of red flags. I guess it was going to die. And I was in denial the entire time. In denial the whole time. But I was like, so he thinks he found the truth of the matter. Did he intend to die by that robot's hands? Was this like a premonition of his death that he felt? Did he have some kind of prediction of what was going to go down? Because Hoffman's like, your memory. And then he's like, says goodnight, and that's it. So meanwhile, they go to find Pluto. And we don't know if they find Pluto or not. We don't know. But they're just telling him, like, you know, he's like, why did you erase those memories? I didn't even know that I had lost them. And then he just takes off. So then we have Anton, the little robot there with the blue eyes, taking the last of the flowers. He's like, you're such a hard worker, Anton. And he's like, yeah, I've got one more delivery and I'm all done. And that's it. And so he gets the flowers to take to his, and there's like baby's breath and lilies and roses. I was like, that bouquet is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But I want to say, like, the lilies mean death, don't they? Yeah, purity, renewal, transience. Yeah, you know, the purity, you know, and roses and their meaning. Oh my God. Because what is it? Roses and lilies. Yeah, that big bouquet of roses and lilies. They're associated with love. Yep, ideal love and purity. Oh, I'm like, but why? So he's thinking of his wife. I want to go back to this death scene and just go back to it. Because he's planning on giving this to her. And then he stops ahead and sees with the cannon, it's Ali. And he sees him stumbling that way. And he's in the shadows. And I'm like, what? How dare you give us that image of Gesek? And of course, they have like a floating ship that's tied to the dock. So did somebody take him there? Somebody take that robot there from the Persian so he could go and kill Gesek? And then he like shows up and sees Ali, and he has and then Urasawa has the nerve to have like Gesek smile at us, and I'm like, freaking, are you kidding me? Oh my god! And yeah, with the rocket in his hand, I saw the arm and the rocket launcher, but I didn't see the rocket at first inside of it. And I was just like, wait, that's not just the little card reader. What's going on? So then he goes up, he's like, oh, hey, Anton. He thinks it's Anton, but it's Ali. Shit. Damn it. Because he had the same basket of red flowers. But then it's dark and he notices that it's not Anton. And it's, no. Yep, and he knows it's Ali. And his face changes. And he's like, I know you. You're from the Persian Bazaar, Ali. And he's like, how did you get to Amsterdam? But then the creepy part is that Ali transitions into the robot that's his kid. And I'm like, wait a minute. Hold the phone. Is this kid... Is the kid the one with the teddy bear? And that's just him as the robot? What is happening? Because then, yeah, Gesek has the memory of his kid being reminded from Ali, the one that was destroyed in the bag, right? That had its, like, arm severed. And the blood, right? And then there's that flash, and it says 500 Zeus a body. What do you say? But we still don't know what that means. And then we see like the kid, the robot with the arm missing, but it's a different arm. It's not the same arm that Ali was missing. It's the opposite one. And then we see the robot walking towards them. He's actually walking Gesek. And then we see the two of them with him walking towards them. Yeah, but he doesn't have an arm. Like, what in the world does that mean? And then the rocket's pointed at him. Oh, and Gesek looking so sad. Like he's going to cry, and he says, I remember. So he remembers his kid, but what else did he remember that he didn't remember from before? Because then he reaches out towards the robot, and he says, come here, you're okay, Ali. There's no need to be scared. You heard that shot go off now, just in you. It can be a rough neighborhood. I've got you. Oh, he says, you remind me of my own little one. And then he falls down. Like that was the only thing that he was going to be good for, was to do that in that moment. And then Gesek like takes a step forward, but he's already been shot through. Yeah. I am just completely floored. I am completely floored. I was in denial. I can't believe it. Yeah, like it just shot straight through him. All the rose petals everywhere. And then like his eyes just completely losing their light. Nope. 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 And they said, yeah, one of the world's most advanced robots was found, yeah, next to a small D-class robot armed with a cluster cannon was found deactivated at the scene. And then, yeah, so then we go underwater, right? So something, was it Pluto? Was it Goji? What caused this? Who killed Gesek? That's the question now. So the other thing that should have been like throwing me off was like the way that Helena was totally fine with all this. And Hoffman and Ochani Mizu are like, they take her to Japan and they're like, oh, she just seems so unaware. And I was kind of like, I figured she'd be sadder. Well, no, she was hiding all of her emotions until she met up with Tenma. And then she revealed she's pissed and sad. But I love how Hoffman said he would offer to erase her memories. And she was like, no, I don't want you to erase any memories of him. And I'm like, I don't blame you, girl. I don't blame you at all. Nope. But, oh, her seeing like the red pinwheels kind of like being like the wheels are in motion, but tying to the roses and the tulips. And then her seeing Tenma. I'm going to say this. in Neon Genesis, all I will say is Gendo gets some in Neon Genesis. And how, I don't know. I will admit, Tenma looks great here, but he's just getting it with everybody. I'm like, what the fudge? No. I was like, you get your hands off Helena. She's Gesik's wife. You leave her alone. But yeah, so she says, she's like, you must be Dr. Tenma. And so he's like, did you bring it? And she has the memory chip that's his. Will this help find the one behind his murder? And he like looks at it saying, but of course. I'm like, he's just getting everything he wants. I think he's going to do something with that chip. I don't want this to be the last we see of Gesik, but I'm also afraid it's going to be the last we see of Gesik. Ugh. Cruel. Cruel. And she's like, what if I can't process all these emotions? This mountain of grief inside of me. I think of my husband and the thoughts get clearer day by day. Like she feels hatred and anger. And of course, freaking Tenma's like Darth Sidious over here telling her to cry like, yes, let the hate flow through you. Like he's just like, just fostering all this hatred. I'm like, what is your end game? Stop. Like, it's great that these robots have like these feelings, but like, why does it have to be hatred and sorrow? Why can't the intense emotion be ecstasy and elation? Why can't we do that? Ah! Oh my God. And then he's like, look at these tears. I'm crying because my son Adam is dead. And I'm like, is he dead? Oh my God. So guess it could be dead. Probably is dead. Probably is not coming back. And I'm horrifically sad about that. Epsilon's the last robot left, except for Adam. I'm worried about him. I was worried about him in this episode. Should have been fine, but... Nope. And Tenma is scheming. Abula is scheming. We don't know where Pluto is. We don't know where Goji is. We don't know what the F this child is. This whatever is. There's a lot of mysteries left, y'all, and next week is the penultimate episode. And I'm not ready. I'm not ready! So, Yep. That's where we're at. So, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but this episode's hit me like a freight train, and I'm going to need some time to process. So I'm going to be like Helena and need some time to process it all. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of Pluto. Bye.